What's going on, everyone? It's the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football video. Today we are going to be talking about bold predictions for the 2023 NFL season at the wide receiver position. But before we get into it, if you guys could, go down and give this video a like. I'm answering every single comment. You guys have any questions related to fantasy football, or you think I'm totally wrong on one of these bold takes, let me know down below, and subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on. I would just like to say that I am doing these takes from least spicy to spiciest. But the first bold take that I have is that Ceedee Lamb finishes as the wide receiver 1 this upcoming season. I don't really think this is a ridiculously bold take, but it certainly does take a little bit of extrapolation to get there. I mean, for one, Ceedee Lamb did finish as the wide receiver 6 this past season, finishing with about 248 fantasy points, which does put him a little under 60 points away from Justin Jefferson, which is about 3-ish fantasy points extra per game that Ceedee Lamb would need to score if he were to hit the wide receiver 1 threshold this upcoming season. But I think there's a lot of signs pointing to the fact that Ceedee Lamb could get there, or could at least be close. I mean, for one, he had 1,350 yards this season, despite playing with Cooper Rush for 5 games. Not only that, the Cowboys do let Ezekiel Elliott go, and while I do think they will pick up somebody in the draft, depending on the caliber of running back they pick up, I don't think it will be Zeke level usage rate of that running back. I mean, again, it totally depends on who they go after. They get Bijan in the first round, this bold prediction will totally go in the trash. But either way, Ceedee Lamb is entering into a situation where he should have Dak for a full season, and Dak usually does put up a lot of yards and get a lot of touchdowns. So I would not be surprised to see Ceedee Lamb get tons and tons of yards and have somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 12 touchdowns, which if he gets 160, 170 targets, 115 receptions, and 1,500 yards plus 12 touchdowns, I think wide receiver 1 is well within the range of outcomes. I know Justin Jefferson just had 1,800 yards, but at the same time, seasons like that are really not all that common. I mean, I feel like they're more common now than they used to be, with guys like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill just being absolutely dominant wide receivers. But at the same time, I think the stretch for Ceedee Lamb to become the wide receiver 1 isn't that large. Well, it's not the most likely outcome. Obviously, I think Justin Jefferson probably has the best odds to finish as the wide receiver 1. That's why this is a bold take, and that is the first bold take, the least spicy of the bold takes. Now, though, let's move on to our second bold take and get a little bit more spicy here, more like something like Frank's Red Hot Sauce, maybe some Cholula here. We got DeVonta Smith outperforming A.J. Brown, and I think there is a little bit of a leap you could take to get here, but it's not a ridiculous one yet again. Why it's lower on the board of my spicier takes. I think DeVonta Smith definitely has the opportunity to surpass A.J. Brown in total fantasy points, as we saw from weeks 10 on last season. From weeks 10 on, again, DeVonta Smith finished as the wide receiver 4, ahead of the likes of Tyreek Hill, ahead of the likes of A.J. Brown, ahead of the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown. All these guys are phenomenal wide receivers. DeVonta Smith outproduced them all. And not only that, he did it on the back of 90 yards per game and 9.5 targets a game, which is phenomenal at the wide receiver position. Furthermore, he doesn't really have to go up against wide receiver 1 coverage because A.J. Brown exists, and A.J. Brown, again, a phenomenal wide receiver, and I still think he could outperform DeVonta Smith, absolutely, but the leap to get there for DeVonta Smith is not really all that hard. I mean, DeVonta put up 207 fantasy points last season, whereas A.J. Brown had 255. That's about 3 fantasy points more per game DeVonta Smith needs to get, which I think is well within the range of outcomes for DeVonta Smith. I think he's also one of the most undervalued players in all of underdog fantasy, but that's a story for another day, another video that might be coming out later this week. But either way, DeVonta Smith, somebody who has the talent, the draft pedigree going 10th overall, the production, especially during the second half of the season. I mean, there's really no red flags in DeVonta Smith's profile, besides his weight, but I think he's already proven that one wrong. I think DeVonta Smith could finish with 1,400 yards this season, and if that's true, I think A.J. Brown probably would take a step back and average closer to somewhere to 1,400 yards as well, which means DeVonta Smith could outproduce A.J. Brown this upcoming season. My next hot take is also about teammates, but it is a little bit spicier because the gap between these two is a little bit bigger. Actually, it's a lot bigger. Jahan Dotson outperforming Terry McLaurin this upcoming season. I mean, first of all, Jahan Dotson was ranked as the wide receiver 50.5 points scoring this last season, whereas Terry McLaurin was the wide receiver 14, but I think that gap shrinks a fair amount, especially considering I think Jahan Dotson looked really good in his rookie year. I mean, this is more of an eye test thing for me than anything, but I think Jahan Dotson looked really good as a wide receiver. He has the draft capital going 16th overall. He's not going to be covered by the cornerback 1 either, because that will go to Terry McLaurin. They do bring in a new quarterback in Jacoby Brissett. We also have Sam Howell here. Whichever one takes the job, I don't really think it matters all too much. Either way, these guys are probably both lower tier quarterbacks in my humble opinion, which means that I don't think Terry McLaurin has the ceiling that he kind of has deserved for a while now, because quarterbacks have always hampered Terry McLaurin. So I project Terry McLaurin to finish somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 yards yet again, as he does every single season of his career. I think that means Jahan Dotson has to take a pretty massive step up. That is the leap I expect him to take. I mean, despite only playing 12 games this season, he did have 520 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, this is a wide receiver who seems to have a knack for the end zone, which I think might put him over Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin over the past 3 seasons has not eclipsed 5 touchdowns in a season. We'll see, though. I think this one is now getting into the spicy territory. I mean, this is something that I don't think is very, very likely to happen. I wouldn't bet on it, that is for sure. But I think it is a nice take that could happen, realistically, if Terry McLaurin takes a step back and Jahan Dotson decides to take a pretty big step forward. The next take I have, and I think this is where it starts to get spicy. I will say, this is a spicy take, and it's something that if you guys have watched this channel for a while, you know I love this guy. Elijah Moore is going to outperform Amari Cooper. Well, I don't think a take like this is likely at all, to be honest with you. I mean, Amari Cooper coming off the board on Underdog Fantasy as the wide receiver 18, whereas Elijah Moore is coming off the board as the wide receiver 48. My love for Elijah Moore has no bounds. I think Elijah Moore is stepping into a great situation with a great quarterback. We could easily see Deshaun Watson favor Elijah Moore over Amari Cooper. I mean, all of last season, Amari Cooper's top 10 wide receiver numbers were built with Jacoby Brissett. Ever since Jacoby Brissett came in, Amari Cooper was not that great of a wide receiver. And I don't think that is indicative of what's going to happen in the future, because Deshaun Watson's season last season was pretty much a wash. His season 2 seasons ago didn't exist. But either way, I mean, he did not show much chemistry with Amari Cooper. Then the Browns go out and trade a second-round pick to go out and get Elijah Moore, somebody who they clearly like, and somebody who I think Deshaun Watson would have a say in, considering Deshaun Watson got the most guaranteed money of all time out of any quarterback ever. So I do think that this Elijah Moore signing was pretty intentional, somebody who fits Deshaun Watson's playstyle pretty well. And that's why I do think Elijah Moore has a chance to outperform Amari Cooper. Well, it is, again, not likely. I think Elijah Moore did show pretty good breakout from week 7 to 13 in his rookie season, where he was the wide receiver 4 with the likes of Mike White and Zach Wilson at quarterback. I don't think after what Zach Wilson did last season, I've seen a single Zach Wilson defender. I mean, unless it's, a middle-aged mom. But either way, I digress. I don't think either of those guys are really great quarterbacks. And yet Elijah Moore still was the wide receiver 4 from week 7 to 13 again. So I think it is entirely possible that he outperforms Amari Cooper, especially considering historically who Amari Cooper's been as a wide receiver. I mean, this is somebody who consistently finishes with around 1,100 yards. I mean, not a wide receiver, in my opinion, who's ever going to have a 1,500 yard breakout season, considering he is going into his age 29 season, which is starting to get a little bit older, especially considering he did come into the league at 2015. Elijah Moore is going to be facing cornerback 2 coverage. He's going to be in the slot, meaning he probably will get more receptions than Amari Cooper. We'll see, though. Let me know down below, because that is a spicy take, I know. Getting into our last take, this is the spiciest take of them all. I think the spiciest take of them all by a landslide. I got Jerry Jeudy finishing as the top 5 wide receiver this fantasy season. And yeah, I know, this is spicy. This is a really, really crazy take. But at the same time, I think Jerry Jeudy has pretty much all the tools he needs to finish as a top 5 wide receiver this upcoming season. I mean, he has a former very elite quarterback, somebody who, before the start of last NFL season, was probably a lock to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, somebody who has led the Seahawks to Super Bowls, comes into the Broncos organization and falters a ton, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, under the tutelage of Nathaniel Hackett. But now, you go from Nathaniel Hackett, somebody who is a completely unproven head coach, I mean, somebody who was probably just riding under the coattails of Aaron Rodgers, to Sean Payton. I mean, I guess you could say it was probably riding under the coattails of Drew Brees at least a little bit, but Sean Payton, proven system, a lot more proven of a head coach. Now to work with Russell Wilson, I think Russell Wilson is going to figure a lot of stuff out. Not only that, they do bolster the O-line, giving Russell Wilson a little bit more time in the pocket, which is great because their O-line looked terrible last season. Not only that, they finished with the least amount of points out of any team last season, finishing under 17 points per game on average. And despite all that, despite all the terrible stuff that was happening, game after game after game with the Broncos, Jerry Jeudy still performed. 972 yards, 100 targets, 67 receptions. I mean, that is great. I mean, that is decently high-level production for a fantasy wide receiver. Again, nowhere near top 5. That's why this is the spiciest, the boldest of all these takes. But either way, this is somebody who... And did I mention he had 900... And did I mention he did all that despite only playing 14 games? I know in the stat sheet it technically says 15, but one game he only played 1% of snaps. Not going to count that in my book. Which puts him at about 70 yards per game on average. And I think the fact that this offense is only going to get better, and I think it is entirely possible that Courtland Sutton, and I think it is entirely possible the organization does elect to trade Courtland Sutton. And if that's the case, that leaves Jerry Jeudy alone as the wide receiver 1 in this offense, alongside Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. Not guys I'm all too excited about. So I think Jerry Jeudy is going into an offense that should be a lot better, with a much better head coach than last season, a potential first ballot Hall of Famer quarterback who is not at an age cliff, and more targets are going to be freed up in this offense with the potential departure of Courtland Sutton. Not only that, they bolster the O-line, which is exactly what they needed, and Jerry Jeudy is going into his age 24 season, a season in which wide receivers generally tend to start peaking. Overall, I know this is a very, very bold take, especially considering that Jerry Jeudy is the wide receiver 22 on Underdog Fantasy, going right in between DJ Moore and Christian Watson. While it isn't the most likely outcome, I am really, really excited for Jerry Jeudy. My love for him is growing by the day. Let me know what you think down below, though. I know all these takes are 100% right. I know they will hit, guaranteed. But if for some odd reason you don't think they will, which, again, they're pretty much lock here, but if for some reason you don't think they will, go down in the comments below, let me know, and subscribe to the channel, turn that notification bell on so you don't miss another video. With that, though, guys, as always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.